What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing some paranormal encounters that happened along the Appalachian Trail. I'm also still getting over being sick and just wanted to thank all of you guys for all of the well wishes, love, light, healing, all that kind of stuff. So, as I was searching for things to cover this week on my channel, I came across some really creepy encounter stories with ghosts and spirits. And as I was researching my stuff for MPNM, I was doing a lot of missing people, mysterious events on mountain ranges. So I kind of decided to combine the two. But these encounters just kept coming up in my searches, like ghostly encounters and apparitions. I like to go with the more terrifying if I can, but the downright strange and creepy seems to get almost the same effect, at least from me. I know for an absolute fact, ghosts and spirits, both positive and negative energies, walk amongst us all the time. I know some of you are skeptics, but as always, I ask that you only keep an open mind, and if at the end of the video, you still aren't a believer or at least somewhat less skeptical, then that's okay too. In that case, I hope you are at least entertained. I find that many of my subscribers who have become close friends, and even some who have become like family, find my content more believable simply for the fact that I would never report anything to you guys that I myself wouldn't believe in. So I wouldn't ask you to believe in something that I didn't. So without further ado, here it is. Real paranormal encounters that happened along the Appalachian Trail. Some people call it Appalachian. I call it Appalachian. Jersey. The Appalachian Trail is sprawled out across a vast part of eastern North America and spans 1,500 miles from the island of Newfoundland all the way down to central Alabama. The Appalachian Mountains, also called the Appalachians, is one of the great mountain ranges of this continent. The Appalachians were formed over 480 million years ago and are one of the oldest mountain ranges in North America. There's no way this place doesn't have many different types of entities, energies, ghosts, spirits, devils, demons, and all things in between, lurking around behind every shadow and around every turn. If you're a believer, then you already know that a place this old must be absolutely riddled with paranormal activity. The trail is 2,200 miles long and is the longest hiking trail in the entire world and passes through a whopping 14 different states. These states are, and they're in no particular order, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, with an extension called the International Appalachian Trail continuing northeast, crossing Maine, cutting through Canada to Newfoundland, and with sections continuing in Greenland, through Europe, and even into Morocco. Millions of people hike one part of this trail or another every single year, and I bring you now just a few of the unbelievable and extremely strange tales of the paranormal and the bizarre that have been encountered throughout the years. I'm sure there will be a part 2 of this as well, possibly even a series. Who knows? Might as well go crazy. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to hear more. So, in 2011, a man I will just call Josh was out backpacking alone along the trail near Catawba, about 15 miles from Newcastle, Virginia, camping out all along the way. The nights got pretty lonely, but Josh says that even worse than that, on several of the nights he camped, he was unable to sleep due to what sounded like footsteps crunching the leaves under someone's foot directly outside of his tent. He says that along with these phantom footsteps, he heard what sounded like a man with a gravelly voice grumbling and talking to himself. Now, keep in mind, he obviously didn't camp at the same place twice and traveled, I'm sure, pretty far distances between campsites. There was no one he ran into on the trails and nobody around as far as the eye could see when he made his camp and settled in for the night, any of the nights. He convinced himself he was just overtired and making himself crazy from being alone for so long, and his mind must have been playing tricks on him. However, it wouldn't take long before he actually saw something with his own eyes he couldn't so readily and easily dismiss. He described how he was collecting firewood and not only had a pretty good little blaze going, but also a pretty good stockpile of wood as well. He was actually starting to enjoy what he described as, quote, the deafening silence of nature, end of quote. He put his feet up, lit himself a cigarette. He flicked his cigarette, meaning to get it into the fire, but he missed. So he got up to grab it and manually put it directly into the blaze and stoked the fire while he was at it. He said he got up and picked up the butt, but when he turned around, he stated, quote, that's when I saw him. The light was low with my little fire, but I could clearly see a man reaching down with a scorched hand towards my firewood. He quickly looked up and his vacant white eyes connected with mine. He gritted his teeth and scrunched his nose towards me before quickly leaving the ring of firelight. I was shocked. I have never experienced a fear like it. I fell right onto my butt next to the flames. I looked out into the forest and saw nothing but dark shadows and unclear objects, a blank wall of nothing, of everything. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even yell, with no one to hear me but him, so I did what every red-blooded American would do. I packed up my things and got the hell out of Dodge. End quote. He traveled until the sun was just beginning to rise and had every intention of continuing on as fast as he could because he was no longer interested in this solo hiking adventure he had set out on. He said he wanted to get back home, back to civilization. However, he inevitably became too tired to continue on and fell asleep right where he was at the moment the urge to lay down hit him. And it did hit him quite suddenly, he explained. He woke 3 hours later with the intention of getting further along on his way, but it seems the Appalachians weren't quite done with his dose of the terrifying and bizarre just yet. He said he smelled something, quote, strange, and when he continued to smell it, as he sat there allowing himself a few minutes to wake up, he decided to go and investigate what the heck it was that was permeating his nostrils so blaringly. He said something told him to jump up quickly and that there was trouble approaching. His instinct or intuition, most likely. He stated, quote, what I saw was my tent, or what remained of my tent. For now, the only thing left standing was the tent poles that dripped with oozing leftovers of my tent body. A bubbly layer of melted green plastic lay beneath the poles, with a steady gray smoke still rising from the mess. I got up and felt the weight of the sky fall on my head. For a moment, I was sure I had woken up into a horrible nightmare. Without contemplating it much further, I grabbed my water bottle and ran through the empty pasture. By the time I made it to the gravel road, I was out of breath and dripping with sweat. I hastily chugged for my water bottle and wiped my mouth. Down the road, I could see a vehicle parked in the dust. I staggered forward with my hands at my sides and soon realized it was a sheriff's sedan. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't have been happier to see a law enforcement vehicle. When I got closer to the vehicle, I noticed that it was parked outside of the remains of a charred house. Nothing left standing but the mailbox out front. End of quote. He explains next that he asked the officer to drive him into town and decided not to mention any of the weirdness he had experienced during his adventure on the trail. He did, however, inquire about the charred remains of what was obviously once an entire house that the sheriff had been parked near when he stumbled upon him. The officer told him that 4 days earlier, which was the same day he had started his trip, the house had burned down. Despite a lengthy and thorough investigation, they couldn't determine what had caused the fire, but they did suspect that it was arson. An entire family, mom, dad, and their 2 young daughters, all perished in the blaze. The sheriff described it as, quote, real tragic stuff, end of quote. But the guy could only stare, jaw agape at what he was hearing. I don't know, guys. You put 2 and 2 together here. Our next encounter takes place in the mid-1980s when the witness was at a shelter one December along the Appalachian Trail in Amherst County, Virginia, along with his son and their dog, Ginger. As they relaxed at their camp talking, they saw something very strange come rambling out of the wilderness. He stated, quote, the figure came within 100 feet. The thing was tall and wore a dark brown fur coat. I was aware of Ginger's barking changing to something I had never heard from her before that event, nor after. Without thinking, I called out to the figure to come over and have some hot drink. That's when things got very difficult to explain, end of quote. He recalled that when this mysterious beast-like thing turned to face them, it had a human-shaped head, but it wasn't at all human in appearance. That's when the thing completely turned around. Its entire front body and face were visible to them now, and it was staring at the dog. Ginger was still barking at this time, incessantly at this thing, but as soon as it placed its eyes on her, her barking, quote-unquote, changed. Her hind legs began to shake uncontrollably, and her barking was no longer barking, but gurgling. It was obvious to this guy that his dog was in extreme pain. The creature then turned around and stalked back into the wilderness. Its strides were long, and it was out of sight within seconds. As soon as its gaze averted away from Ginger, her normal, though very aggressive barking had resumed. It was as though nothing had changed about it since she had first spotted this thing emerging from the woods before them. His son asked him what had just happened to their beloved dog, but the father wasn't really hearing him, as he himself was thinking about how in the world this thing could have physically caused his dog pain like that, or any pain at all really, from the distance of about 100 feet away. He said he wasn't really afraid for the dog, as she was very tough and a handful of a golden retriever. They still decided to spend the night there after this, but the dog was on high alert the whole night and didn't sleep at all. Ginger spent the night staring off into the woods the entire time. The next morning, they made it back to their car without further incident, and once the heat was on, as it was freezing cold night outdoors, Ginger curled up against the man's son and slept the entire 3-hour drive back to their home. The witness went on to state, quote, "I've since learned that the area had a fall and winter with dogs making a lot of noise at night, with a large number going missing. A calf went missing without a trace." The owner was uncommitted as to what was going on, but said his grandfather had a story about the brown man. He had not seen anything, but neighbors had. Something dreadful happened at that shelter in August of 2011. A hiker was found dead and half buried. It's now April of 2016. I have not heard of an arrest. I am interested if there are any similar accounts of these things harming dogs. I'm a skeptic looking for an explanation for Ginger's actions other than Bigfoot having mind control capability over dogs and maybe humans too. End of quote. What in the world could this have been, guys? Bigfoot seems the most logical. I'm not very familiar with most cryptids, Bigfoot included. I'll admit I'm slowly learning and best believe that I've learned much since I first started creating on YouTube in April of 2020, and I'll learn and have been learning even more as I feverishly research in preparation for my new radio show coming in December. More on that at the end, though. I will have to look and see if there's any other reports or if it's a common occurrence for Bigfoot to be able to telepathically or remotely cause physical and possibly even mental and emotional pain to pets and or dogs. I mean, I'm of the impression and opinion thus far that old Sasquatch is an interdimensional being, possibly of the Fae variety. Not sure on that latter conclusion, though, still searching for more. Could that be why it was able to affect the dog in this way? Because it was from somewhere other, and wherever that is, they're able to do things like that. What an absolutely bone-chilling thought, in my own humble opinion. If you have ever heard of anything like this or have more information, let me know in the comment section below, please. I am seriously curious about this matter in particular. I might even have to ask Connor, Mr. Bigfoot, and on himself. Our next encounter is a man who was backpacking through the trail with a group of friends. They had camped for the night, and when they woke in the morning, it was to the sound of children's laughter coming from everywhere all around their camp and the nearby woods. They were out in the literal middle of nowhere, and there was no one else around, let alone any children. It sounded like dozens of children, too, all laughing playfully with each other. They all peeked out of their tents at the same time to have a look at what was going on. The morning was misty with some fog, but they were all very sure of what they were seeing next. It was a procession of children walking right past their campsite. These kids stopped and proceeded to ask what the campers were doing there. The witness responded that they were hiking the Appalachian Trail, to which the children all giggled and in unison replied, quote, "This isn't the Appalachian Trail," end of quote, and kept right on their way, laughing and giggling until they were completely out of sight. The guys said they can hear this children's laughter throughout the entire rest of their hike. The laughter no longer seemed playful now, but taunting, though, as if they knew they were scaring the crap out of these people in the woods. The thing was, though, he said that the laughter now seemed to be coming from nowhere and from everywhere, all at once. That it was seemingly coming from the trees to below their feet and everywhere around and in between. Though the children's laughter could be heard for miles and miles as they continued on before finally making their way back to their vehicles and heading home, they never once even caught so much as a glimpse of the children again the entire time. Fae? Sounds a lot like Fae activity, except Fae wouldn't usually approach and ask what they were doing. Stranger things have happened, though. Back in 1972, a man reported being alone on a trail when all of a sudden a thick fog started gathering all around him. It came out of literally nowhere, as just a second before it was clear and sunny where he was walking along. He tried to peer as best he could off into the distance, and that's when he said he saw, quote, "a tall black figure," end of quote, approaching him. The figure seemed to be wearing a heavy coat and a hat with a wide brim. This mysterious stranger seemed to be looking for something on his person and was very confused himself. He was patting his pockets and had a look of sheer astonishment on his face. In fact, this figure was so involved in looking for whatever it was all about his person, he almost collided with the man telling of the encounter. The witness wrote that the figure looked up to him and met him with icy electric blue eyes that generated a swell of dread within him immediately. It was then that he also realized that the stranger was wearing out-of-date time period clothes, as if he had stepped in from another time period way back when. The hiker says he tried to greet the odd fellow but was ignored. As they passed each other, the witness turned to look back and found that the strange man had simply vanished. This confused me, as at first it sounded like the witness was describing an entity of some sort, but then it turned out that it was a man. Although it was described as a figure and then as a man interchangeably. Weird. I think it was an entity in the shape of a man, except for the seeming confusion as he seemed to be searching for something. I'm really not sure about this one, guys. I totally and completely believe in it 100%, but I'm just not sure what exactly we're dealing with here. Time slip sounds the most reasonable to me. The person who posted this one, and you'll find my source material in the description box below, says he was camping one night on the trail in Maine at a place called Pierce Pond when he saw something he would never forget. He described the weather as exquisite, though he admitted the fact that there were no bugs at all the entire time he was camped and hiking there struck him as odd, like right from the door. He says he sat around his little campfire the first night, playing his harmonica, singing, and just enjoying the alone time and the beauty of the woods. He says as his fire died down to nothing but embers, he grabbed out his journal, intending to document the peace and tranquility of his experience so far in hiking the trail. He didn't even get the pen to the paper, however, before he noticed the sounds of nature all around him. Something about them seemed, quote, off, end quote, and it immediately got his attention. He recalled, quote, they were just different, and I knew someone or something was about. I could feel it, end of quote. He went on to say, quote, through the moonlight, I could see something that kind of took me aback, and I sat still as possible while trying to slouch in my sleeping bag. There is no doubt it was a figure that was moving across my sight between me and the pond. It was definitely the form of a figure that was moving across my sight between me and the pond. It was definitely the form of a spectral, woodsy outdoorsman type with a small pack and what appeared to be fishing gear. The figure faded into the night, and I woke refreshed and relieved to be on the trail in such a beautiful location. I thought about heading out, as my first experience like this had me unnerved. But the day was beautiful, and I mostly forgot about it as I stayed on to enjoy another day in this beautiful weather. But as my campfire lit the trees around me that night, this same woodsy character reappeared, and as the fire crackled, its eyes turned toward me, and I was truly frightened for the first time in my life. And I ran up the hill away from the lean-to and didn't stop until I could barely breathe, end of quote. He said he finally just slumped down next to a large tree and waited out the night there until dawn, when he went back to the lean-to only to retrieve his belongings. Next, he says he went to, quote, Tim's, end quote, for pancakes, as if we know who Tim is. At first, I thought it was like a diner, but then he said he asked, quote unquote, Tim, if he had ever heard or seen anything like this before. So maybe it's a diner or pancake place named after the owner, whose name is Tim, and that's the guy he spoke to. Again, though, annoyingly unclear, and I have no clue. So anyways, he asked Tim, and Tim told him that he had indeed heard of sightings like this and said that for years, quote, this vision, end quote, had been haunting a wide area of the trail in Maine, but he wasn't sure if the figure had caused any trouble or harmed anyone. I don't know, guys. I was kind of hoping he would have described the figure a little bit more. I was thinking he would hint towards what maybe he thought it was, and then we could get our own idea, but no such luck. Maybe it was some sort of ghost. Could it have just been a guy who lives in the woods, feral or otherwise, who goes out at night and fishes for the next day's food for his family and when nobody else is around? Very creepy either way you spin it. I would absolutely love to hear what you all think about this one. As we finish up here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the allegedly haunted places that are said to be all along the Appalachian Trail as well. I'm definitely going to do a full video on this, but I thought these two places are definitely worth mentioning here. I figured it would bring a nice closing to the script as it is. These places are Compton's and Fox's Gap and nearby Spook Hill, and I chose them out of the hundreds of haunted places, with several in every single one of the 14 states the trail passes through or runs along because of what happened here. As a psychic, you all who have been with me for even a little while will know I know all about energy and talk a lot about it on my channel, both here in my videos and in the live streams. These particular places were where some deadly and fierce battles of the American Civil War took place. In 1862, when this bloody and maybe most would agree nonsensical war was taking place, it was filled with horror, blood, death, carnage, anarchy, and mayhem. The earth and foliage were soaked, and the water sources near ran red with blood of fallen soldiers. Bodies were just left to lay and rot side by side, regardless of whose side they had fought for. Most of these bodies never even got the grace and peace of a proper burial. Obviously, this is a place where there is tons of energy left behind. It's been a paranormal hotspot ever since those days long ago, centuries in fact, that the war took place. One of the most popular legends being that cars parked at Spook Hill will be pushed up the incline by unseen hands, and that ghostly handprints will appear upon vehicles. There are also numerous apparitions of Civil War era soldiers seen here, and the whole area is commonly referred to as, quote, Spook Central, end quote. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and that's that these stories I just spoke of sound a lot like urban legends from every and any town in the United States and beyond. However, I don't really think so. In this case, I definitely think it could very well be true. Maybe the activity isn't exactly as people say it is, with the ghostly hands pushing the cars and leaving handprints, but if there ever were a place where I would believe that this was much more than an urban legend and definitely be willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, it's this place. I would definitely keep an open mind if someone were to tell me that they were there and this exact thing had happened to them. In my opinion, from my own personal and lifelong experiences, there is no way possible that this place isn't haunted in some way, even if it isn't cars being pushed up hills and handprints being left on the cars. And I really want to investigate this one further. Guys, please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, if you liked spending this time with me, if you're glad to have me back after my week-long hiatus. Subscribe if you haven't already, and spread the love by sharing this video. If you are subscribed, please make sure your notification bell is turned on. I can't share the campfire stories, the fireside chat, or even Caleb's mom, April Arrington's live stream interview, because I realized the other day that all of those videos had been set to private and not unlisted as I previously thought they were. So if you go to click them, they'll just be dead links. In the description box below, you will find a link to my Wednesday night live streams where I do live intuitive oracle readings from around 7 p.m. Eastern Time to around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And I pull a card for everyone who comes in within that amount of time that I possibly can. And I usually end up just keep going until everyone's done. You'll also find my email, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, if you want to get in touch with me for any reason. If you have any encounters with the supernatural and or paranormal that you want to be included in my listener encounters series. And if you want a personal reading from me, the personal readings I do for free with donation link in the description box of the video I send you. I know I've fallen a little bit behind on the listener encounters stories, but that does not mean that I'm not working on them behind the scenes here. I'll have one out fairly soon. With that being said, please be patient with me with comments and emails. I should be caught up really soon, like I said, and I'm working like an absolute maniac to do just that. A link to the Spaced Out radio interview I did with Dave Scott on October 7th, where I talked about my book, Missing the Fae Theory, fairies in general, and even Robot Granny, can be found in the description box as well. As many or most of you know, starting December 11th, 2021, so next month, every Saturday and Sunday night from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time, I am going to be a part of hosting a radio show about paranormal current events. Big Willie Townsend will be there, and someone else that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet and whose name I can't remember. I'm so sorry, but obviously I'll keep updating you as the days and weeks progress so you all can be there. So I'm going to be one of 3 hosts on KPNL Radio, streaming on Spaced Out Radio here on YouTube. Twice a week. Oh my God, like I can't even believe it, guys. I sincerely hope we can get the hashtag Stemma, hashtag Gempire, hashtag Tribe, and hashtag Girl Squad all there to come through and represent our community hard. I'm so very nervous, but with your support, I know I'll be all right. I love and appreciate you all so much, and I literally would not be where I am today if it wasn't for you guys, because if you guys didn't support me and come and watch my videos and like them and all the things that you do coming into the live streams, who would I be talking to? Thank you to everyone who bought my book and left a review. If you've gotten through it and you really liked it, please go to Amazon and leave a review. It's not too late to do that. It really does help in the long run with my other books that are going to be coming out. The next one I'm handing in, it's a book of short ghost stories in collaboration with our very own, the paranormal Bob Ross, Mr. Steve Stockton himself. So it should be out early next year sometime. Then on to my book about shadow people and possibly my book about lifelong personal experiences. I owe it all to you guys, and I hope you'll continue to support me no matter what throughout this amazing and incredible journey of me sincerely and truly accomplishing my dreams. Like, I became what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that's an author. Thank you so much also to everyone who's donated in any way, whether it be of your time, your spirit, your kindness towards me, your support, the people who have became patrons on my Patreon. Guys, I'm working on your personals. Believe me, I'm getting through them as fast as I can. Anyone who donated through PayPal, anyone who donated through purchasing something off my wish list on Amazon, all of that stuff and how to purchase my book, either the Kindle version, the paperback version on Amazon, will be in the description box below. I love you guys so much. Please be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. It can make you feel really good. Also, though, remember to be kind to yourself. Smile at a stranger. Always go in grace. Have your best day. Have your best night. And I will see you next time.